This episode was recorded August 4th, 2025. Today, we're sitting down with Republican Attorney General Alan Wilson as he continues his bid for governor. We talk about everything from the attacks from his own party to his platform stances, and we even discuss what's driving him crazy. We talked to Lowcountry voters. Trump was in true campaign form. Voting is officially underway. Joe Biden spoke here in the heart of downtown.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, I've got Attorney General Alan Wilson with me here today. First and foremost, welcome to the set. Welcome to Live 5. Thanks for being here. And what brings you to the Lowcountry today?
Obviously, campaigning around the state of South Carolina, going from one end of the state to the other, and I'm spending a lot of time down here in the Lowcountry getting to talk to people about my plans for our state when I'm elected governor next year.
All right, you know, it is a packed and crowded race already. In fact, today, Representative Nancy Mace, of course, she's jumping into the ring. We've got the Lieutenant Governor, Pamela Evette, as well as State Senator Josh Kimbrell. Who else we got? We got Congressman Ralph Norman as well. It's a busy race. How are you going to stand out?
Well, first off, my 15 years of being Attorney General, I think stands out. My record of accomplishments, my record of success, it speaks for itself. Additionally, I think unlike anyone else running for governor right now, I think it's important that you recognize the governor as the commander-in-chief of the National Guard. I'm the only person here who's actually served in the military with nearly 30 years of active military service in the National Guard, including a combat tour. Have served and led soldiers in combat, and so when you're electing someone to be governor, you want someone on day one who knows how to command and lead our military forces, as well as making serious decisions. Having made decisions in a combat zone, I know how to make the tough decisions.
This is probably going to be a race that is settled in the primary, but I just got to kind of ask, are you guys preparing at all for the time between the primary and November? Do Democrats have a shot at all here?
Right now, all I'm thinking about is June 9th of 2026 because, I have to win the primary in order to even be considered in the general. And so I view this as a job interview. I'm traveling the state of South Carolina. Everyone that I'm talking to, I'm viewing as a prospective employer. And I'm here to say, hey, this is who I am. This is what I've done in the past, and this is what I want to do in the future. I would love to have your vote. It's a job interview because at the end of the day, the office of governor doesn't belong to any occupant. It belongs to the people of South Carolina, and I'm asking them to elect me to be the trustee of that office.
Well, let's talk a little bit more here about the fact that everybody in this race is very much a pro-Trump Republican here. It's going to be a bit of a gloves-off kind of match to see if who can win his endorsement. Are you going after his endorsement? Are you going to get his endorsement?
Well, first off, he's the leader of our party at the national level. Anybody who says they don't want the president's endorsement is lying to you. Of course I love his endorsement, but I also understand, like the people of South Carolina, President Trump wants me to work for it, wants people to earn his endorsement. He's not going to give it freely. I do not expect that. So would I like his endorsement? Absolutely. But I want people to elect me based on what Alan Wilson will do as their governor, not based on who's endorsing me or endorsing other people. It's really about the individual because at the end of the day, this office belongs to the people of South Carolina, and I want to be a transformational governor. I want to be a governor who's going to get South Carolina from good to great. Now, I want President Trump's endorsement, but at the end of the day, Alan Wilson's going to be the governor of South Carolina, not Donald Trump.
Well, speaking of endorsements, though, you've already collected the endorsements of quite a few of the sheriffs around town, especially here in the Lowcountry. Again, your biggest rivals, in theory, likely going to be Representative Nancy Mace, but you've locked up all the sheriff endorsements in the Tri-County, Berkeley, Dorchester, Charleston, and I think probably 20 or 23 more. You've got a lot of them. But what do you think that says about your position and the people that support you?
Well, for people out there who are watching this broadcast, understand that the number one core function of government is public safety, keeping people safe. Tax policies, education, infrastructure, all that's very, very important. We'll talk about that. But if people don't feel safe in their homes, if they don't feel like they can send their children to school, if they can't live, work, and raise a family without fear of being shot or losing their property, then what good is it? What good is government? So I thought it was very important to send a message to the people of South Carolina that as the chief law enforcement officer, or at least the chief prosecutor of the state, that I have the trust and respect of all of the men and women in law enforcement throughout South Carolina, or at least a majority of them, and having secured 23 sheriff endorsements, including all 5 sheriffs in the Lowcountry, have come out and endorsed me, says a lot about how I've demonstrated my ability to lead on issues that are important to promote public safety here in South Carolina. So that is something I'm very, very proud of.
Well, let's jump a little bit more into those positions, those policies that you're going to need to take a stand on one way or another. I've got a couple of 5 or 6 big topics that I think lots of folks are going to be looking at their leaders saying, where does he stand on these things? So I kind of just want to go down the line here and see if you can give us a sentence or two on your policy position for each one. So
Sure.
Let's start with abortion here. What changes would you make to South Carolina's current abortion law, if any?
When I look at abortion, it has to be measured with compassion, common sense, and consensus. It has to be governed by those 3 elements. Building consensus. I have been a devout pro-life attorney general. I have defended South Carolina's heartbeat bill in court. I actually went to the U.S. Supreme Court in support of the Dobbs decision all those years ago. So I'm going to continue to maintain that consistent position of governing from a place of compassion and consensus. And I just think that's very important on that issue.
Oh, I mean, what I hear you saying is that you like where we are now, but if the consensus were to change, you'd be open to it.
Well, right now, I like where we are, and I think that is the consensus. And so when I look at where we are now, I think that's where I'm hearing the consensus of pro-life Republicans, and that's the position I'm going to maintain, to continue to defend this position in court is what I'm going to continue to do as governor.
One of the things that I think is kind of a hot button or a big talker right now is where we are with our state income tax. Where would you take the income tax if any changes at all?
0%.
0%.
0% income tax, 100%. In the Southeast, you've already got 3 states that are already at 0% income tax. 5 other states have already passed laws to take them to 0% income tax. Our border states are, I think Georgia is going to be at 4.99% next year, and North Carolina is at 3.99%. South Carolina is at 6%. We can do better, and we will. We can cut it to 0, and we can do so without shifting that tax burden. The rate of state government spending has grown over a 10-year period by approximately 3.1% faster than the rate of our population. We are spending more and faster than we are growing. Had we capped the rate of government spending to the population rate of growth over a 10-year period, we could have returned nearly $20 billion to the taxpayer in the form of permanent tax cuts. We can cap spending, we can basically take the income tax down to 0 over a period of several years, giving people the ability to invest back in their families, back into their businesses, and we can grow South Carolina's economy. We can also attract new and smart growth into the state with these policies.
How long will it take you to get to 0%?
That's up to the state to decide. Most states are doing it between, anywhere between 8, 10 years and all the way up to 15 years. It depends on how much people want to cut spending each year, but that's a conversation you have with the legislature, and then you hear from the people. But we can get to 0% income tax. We can do it, and we will when I'm governor.
Okay, we have to talk about roads and bridges, of course. Not necessarily the most exciting political topic, but certainly one that people talk about in their everyday lives. What kind of plan do you have for making sure that when you're crossing from North Carolina to South Carolina, you don't even know what's happening?
Listen, there is a noticeable difference. Anyone who's driven up I-95 from North Carolina or Georgia into South Carolina, you notice a distinct difference in how the roads are maintained. Infrastructure is vital and it's so important. When I talk to local government leaders, especially here in the low country of South Carolina, I hear a ringing chorus that there is a disconnect between the people in Columbia and the people here. One of the things as governor is I want to bring together a group of people, kind of like an advisory group, to advise on matters of infrastructure. Also, there is mass, I don't want to say fraud, but waste and abuse in how we spend dollars, from the state to the local level. Mm-hmm. And I think if we can implement advanced AI programs to go after that fraud, waste, and abuse, we can return tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars back to critical infrastructure projects as well as education. But there's been a disconnect between how the state works with local people, and I want to address that. And that's one of the things I'm going to do. As the campaign rolls out, we're going to provide and roll out more detailed plans on how we're going to deal with infrastructure. But the way the Department of Commerce recruits, the way that the Department of Transportation coordinates with local governments, that's got to change. Those things have to change. And as governor, personnel is policy. I'm going to put people into positions of power in Columbia who are going to work hand in glove with local administrators, local commissioners, local organizations, because we want to bring growth into South Carolina, but it has to come in a way that respects the character of the communities in which we live. And let me tell you something. I've sat in a parking lot out here on I-26 coming into Charleston for 2 hours a couple weekends ago, and I know people are sick and tired. We want to fix that, and we want to get people spending time at home with their families, not sitting on I-26.
Yeah, using AI to find sort of government waste is one of the things that the folks over at SC Doge are kind of pushing. Is that something that you would like to see, an SC Doge-like department?
Absolutely. We already have it.
Okay.
It's just not beefed up. We have the State Office of the Inspector General. Now, the State Office of the Inspector General, it's a reactionary. It's designed to be someone reports fraud, waste, and abuse. They go investigate, do a report. But what if the IG's office in South Carolina were beefed up with additional resources as well as advanced AI platforms, and it patrolled government spending the way the Highway Patrol patrols the roads and highways of South Carolina? There are people out there who would think twice about driving recklessly or driving under the influence or speeding because they know that there's a high likelihood that someone will catch them on the road. But that's not how we monitor how spending and policies are implemented here at local school districts and local municipal governments, county governments, and state agencies. We need more sunlight, more transparency, more accountability, and bureaucrats ought to spend money and effectuate policies as if at any given moment a battery of investigators will come in and audit them, because that's what will happen. We're going to put so much sunlight on them to make sure that the money is actually going to its intended purpose.
Yeah. I got one more big topic here for you. We got to talk about healthcare, because with the passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill, there's a lot of fear out there that, hundreds of thousands of folks could lose their health insurance. And we know that healthcare is not cheap in this country, and you need insurance in order to see a doctor, really. What can you offer folks to tell them that, you will still have options, or your health care isn't going to go away anytime soon?
Absolutely, your health care is not going to go away. But one thing that the state of South Carolina can do, there's going to be people out there seeking to take advantage or exploit our health care system, our Medicaid program, for example. Just 3 weeks ago, my office uncovered $22 million in Medicaid fraud in South Carolina that was being taken from Medicaid beneficiaries who were children over a 5-year period. What we learned is that the system is guarded by an outdated, outmoded, antiquated system that is easily exploitable by con artists and criminals. So this goes back to doging the state. Our healthcare system needs to be doged as well. There are tens of millions of dollars. Just in one case, $22 million in one case was defrauded from the state of South Carolina. We caught the bad guys, but the system in place to protect us from that fraud was antiquated and outmoded and outdated, and we need to upgrade that. We need to fix it, but so that more money can be in our Medicaid program as well as our healthcare system in South Carolina to go to those who need it the most.
We got to talk about news of the day as well, because you did get another challenger here to the governor's office in Representative Nancy Mace. She didn't call you out too many times in her speech today, but she did make a couple of mentions at you. But I'm curious, in the last 6 months, it seems like the demeanor has changed a little bit. In January, she was tweeting out how you're a protector of women and girls and you're joining the fight to defend folks. A month later, the tone shifts, and she's got a pinned tweet on her Facebook or her Twitter account, X account, that likens your campaign ride to a white van with free candy written on it, making all sorts of suggestions. But I'm curious where you see that, why that switch has flipped, and how that relationship suddenly turned on its head.
Well, the reason she went from being pro-Allen to anti-Allen is because she saw the same polls that I saw, and she sees me as a threat to her political ambitions, which is why she went on the floor of Congress and started castigating and saying horrible things about me and the men and women in law enforcement that work with me, and just outright lying about all of us. The reality is she spends a whole lot more time thinking about me than I think about her. The reality is we have been focusing on promoting public safety in all corners of South Carolina. I'm focused on doing things like growing our Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force to go out there and go after predators and pedophiles, which we're doing. We have created the State Human Trafficking Task Force, which is out there taking on human trafficking as a crime in South Carolina. No one did that before I got to this office. I've revolutionized the way that victims are being treated by creating the Crime Victim Services Division and basically rewriting the domestic violence statutes. We've been out there doing real changes in the legislature. I've been going out there promoting public safety by working with local law enforcement on getting them signed up in the 287G program, which is to go after illegal aliens, especially violent illegal aliens. I've gone out there and had dozens of drug trafficking cases, seized a fentanyl of kilo this past year, enough to kill 500,000 people. My office is involved in cleaning up the streets in South Carolina. We've been working with local law enforcement, which is a reason half the sheriffs in the state have already come out and endorsed me in the first month of this campaign, because they know that I'm the best candidate to protect families and support them in protecting those families throughout South Carolina.
Yeah, we got some numbers from you guys a couple months back about how many people you've been able to capture through internet crimes against children and the various sting operations that you guys have done. I think it was something like you had 800 arrests, and that was up from the year before. And I might have the numbers wrong, but the trend was you're making more arrests every year. For, specifically these people that are targeting children.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the disconnect, and one of the things that Mace brought up today was that there seems to be some issues when it gets to the judgment level here. Some of these folks spending a day in jail or time served or not having to register for on the sex offender list. Can you talk to me about what's going on in the judicial system that you guys are saying, here's a pedophile that we captured, and then they go before a judge and they get a day in court or a day in jail?
Well, first off, I do want to say this. It's important to note that the Attorney General, me, and the prosecutors that catch these people with the law enforcement and bring them in front of a judge, we don't give the sentences. The judges give the sentences. So when people say, Alan Wilson's putting people in jail for only a day, they're lying to you, because that's not how the criminal justice system works. That is done by the court. Now, the court is required to give people credit for the time that they spend in jail when they're caught. And if they get out after a day, if they get out after a week, they are entitled to get credit for that time served. But whatever sentence the judge imposes on them is the judge's prerogative, not ours. Now, what have I been doing? I've been advocating for judicial reform to give the executive branch of government more involvement in how judges are selected. Now, the person who just announced for governor today, one of the only votes they ever made on a judge was Judge Bentley Price, who was run out of the judiciary for giving very, very, very weak sentences on predators, pedophiles, and people who victimize the community. Personnel is policy. You got to hire the right judges that are going to hold the line and enforce the law. The legislature elects those judges. I don't get to elect them, but I have advocated for giving the governor more involvement, like the president, in nominating judges to serve in the judiciary. So I think the governor should have a seat at the table, which we have done a lot of that since this last year. We've got the governor with appointments on the JMSC, but there's more we can do, and I'm going to continue to pursue that as governor.
I mean, is there a specific policy or a specific change that you'd like to see? Because the judicial system in South Carolina it might be controversial to say, but just from the amount of reporting that I've done on folks who are waiting for trial and stuff, it's a bit of a mess. I mean, what change needs to happen to get people processed more, to get these cases resolved, and to see things like lenient sentences not be a reality?
Well, first off, you can only move so much water through a hose. And so if the hose is, an inch in diameter, you can only move an inch of water through it. That's the diameter. And so you're going to have to hire more judges, and you're going to have the right kind of judges. Just having more isn't going to do any good. But then if you have more judges, you also got to look at the other side of it. You're going to have more law enforcement. You're going to have more public defenders, because they're moving the cases at the local level. There's only so many prosecutors. So what we have to do is we have to recognize that personnel is policy. I said this a minute ago. You have to have judges that are going to hold the line. They're going to apply the laws as they are given by the General Assembly, and they're going to put the right kind of sentences. I've been advocating for more transparency in how we elect judges. People should be able to sit at home and watch judicial hearings if they want to go online like we do at the federal level. And if you want to see what kind of judges the legislature is voting on that are going to be adjudicating in your community, putting bad guys and predators away in your community, you should be able to know that they're being voted on in the General Assembly and go online and watch the questions they're being asked. vet them, find out what kind of candidates they are. These transparency. But again, the legislature controls how judges are elected. I have been advocating to give the governor a bigger role in that election and selection process. I'm the first statewide constitutional officer in 30 years to actually move the needle on judicial reform. Last year, we got it passed. It went into effect last month. Now I want to give them 6 months to see how that process works. And then when I'm elected next year, then I can hit the ground running and trying to give the governor more say as to how judges are elected, so that it is easier to hold one governor accountable than 170 legislators, which is why I want the governor at the table.
I see. I stepped into your arena on this question for sure. You seem to know exactly what the problems are, and it sounds like you've got some solutions to fix them as well. I suppose that comes with 15 years of experience.
Well, listen, I'm the only person running. Everyone's talking about judicial reform, and I'm the only one who runs an office who appears in front of judges every day. I'm the only one who's been in court myself as an attorney. I'm the only person who's actually been involved in probably 200 to 300 legal actions against the Biden and Obama administrations at the federal level. I mean, I live in court, so who the judges are matters to me.
All right, last thing here. We don't get a lot of polling in South Carolina, and certainly not just yet, but we have seen a couple of polls, 2, maybe 3, depending on how you look at it. But one of them had you up by a couple of points. Another one had Mace up, I think, just by 1 point. And these are very early polls. But, what do those polls say to you about how people are thinking about this race so far?
I mean, look, in a 5-way race to have, in the vast majority of polls that I've seen, I'm somewhere in the 20-25% range. There's some outlier polls. But to have that much support in a crowded field says a lot about me, I believe. But really, at the end of the day, there's only one poll I care about, and that's the poll we have on June 9th of 2026. That's primary election day. And so all these polls are fine and good, and people are going to tout ones that make them look good, and they're going to dismiss ones that make them look bad. But I'm going to keep my head down, and I'm going to go to every single person and shake every single hand. I'm going to look everyone in the eye, and I'm going to tell them about my vision for South Carolina and how I want to be accountable to them. I want to be their employee, to hold the office of governor in trust for them, okay, because the people of this state are my boss, and that's what I'm going to do for the next year.
Just a lighthearted, a little curveball, if you will. What's driving you crazy right now? I mean, what in the world of the Attorney General is a little nuisance, a rock in your shoe, if you will?
Well, I wouldn't call this a rock in my shoe, but I just had a 15-year-old daughter get her driver's license this past week. So I have a senior in high school and a sophomore in high school. I got 2 teenagers driving. So obviously, as a parent with a new kid driving, there's a little bit of anxiety that comes along with that. So for all the parents out there, if you got any ideas on how you handle your kids driving, she's a great driver, don't get me wrong, but I worry about that. But honestly, I'm like everyone else. I wear a lot of hats, whether it's serving in the National Guard, being the Attorney General, being a candidate for for governor. I'm also someone's husband. I'm someone's dad. I'm someone's brother, someone's son. And just balancing the life, the stresses of life is no different for me than it is anyone else. And so it was great this past weekend to spend some time with the family before the kids went back to school. Watched a couple of movies with the kids, went on a long run. That was fun. So it's been great.
Awesome. But no, for me, it's I went to McDonald's and I got like a breakfast sandwich or something, and it was like $4. And then I added a slice of cheese, and it was $5. And I was like, why is a slice of cheese a whole $1? You can get it for 10 cents at the store. Anyways, it doesn't matter. All right, give the voters your pitch for governor. What's your closing statement here?
You want your governor to be someone that's going to have a steady, firm hand on the steering wheel of state government, having led soldiers in combat, been a 30-year veteran of the military, having led in the Attorney General's office on some of the highest profile cases in South Carolina history, having been a national leader and defended President Trump as well as protected South Carolina from federal government overreach, having represented businesses out there. There's no one more qualified than me to be the next governor of South Carolina. I've been in the public eye for 14 years. You know what you're going to get. You're going to get a reformer and someone who's going to transform government without being an agent of chaos. At the end of the day, I view my role as being a public employee of the people of South Carolina. And I'm asking people for their vote to elect me to be the trustee of the office of government, or of the office of governor. The day that I act like that I'm not holding it in trust, that it is an office that belongs to me, is the day you should throw me or anyone else out on their ear. But at the end of the day, I'm humbly asking people for their support and their vote.
All right, running on his record and his experience, Attorney General Alan Wilson, thank you for coming in.
Thanks.